You know exactly what's happening. You see it clearly. This person makes you feel small, uncertain, never quite enough. And yet, the moment they pull away, your entire nervous system catches fire. You're not stupid. You're not weak. You've probably told yourself both of those things already. Here's what nobody told you. The attraction isn't in spite of the pain. For many people, it's because of it. And the reason lives deep in your biology, in circuits that were carved into your brain long before you ever met this person. There's a specific kind of attraction that makes no sense on paper. The person runs hot and cold. They give you just enough to keep you hoping, then disappear, just long enough to make you panic. And every time they come back, the relief is so enormous that the whole cycle resets. You should leave. You know you should leave. You've known it for months, maybe years. But something in you keeps returning. Not because you enjoy the pain, because your nervous system has learned to read this pattern as love. That's not a character flaw. That's neuroscience. In the 1950s, B.F. Skinner ran an experiment with pigeons and levers. Some levers produced a food pellet every time. Others produced one randomly. The pigeons quickly learned which lever worked consistently and mostly ignored it. The lever that worked unpredictably, they pressed it obsessively, sometimes hundreds of times per minute. The unpredictable reward didn't just create behavior, it created compulsion. Your brain runs on the same circuitry. When affection is inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, available then suddenly gone, your dopamine system doesn't calm down. It escalates. It stays in a permanent state of anticipation. And anticipation, neurologically, is more powerful than reward itself. This is why you can't stop thinking about someone who treats you poorly. Your brain isn't processing affection. It's chasing the next hit of unpredictable relief. The psychology literature calls this a trauma bond. The neuroscience calls it dopaminergic sensitization. Both mean the same thing. You're not in love with the person. You're addicted to the pattern. The answer starts before you were old enough to choose anything. Your first attachment relationships. The people who raised you did something no therapist, no partner, no amount of self-awareness can fully undo. They calibrated your nervous system. They taught your body what it feels like to be close to another person. If warmth was consistent, your system learned. Closeness feels safe. If warmth was inconsistent, present sometimes, withdrawn without warning, conditional on performance, your system learned something different. Closeness feels uncertain. And uncertainty became the signal your body associates with connection. Here's where it gets precise. The amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, is wired to flag familiar patterns as safe, regardless of whether those patterns are actually good for you. Familiar discomfort registers as comfortable, unfamiliar safety registers as suspicious. This is why genuinely kind partners often feel boring. Why their consistent warmth creates a vague unease rather than relief. Your nervous system isn't reading them as safe, it's reading them as wrong. Neuroscientist Helen Fisher put people who had just been rejected in love inside fMRI scanners. The brain regions that lit up weren't grief centers, they were reward centers, specifically the nucleus accumbens, the same structure activated by cocaine and gambling. Rejection from someone you're attached to doesn't create sadness, it creates craving. The cycle works like this. Emotional unavailability triggers cortisol, your stress hormone. Cortisol creates urgency, hypervigilance, obsessive focus on the source of the threat. Then the person returns, briefly warm, and your cortisol drops. Oxytocin floods in. The relief is chemical, physical, overwhelming. Your body stamps that moment. This is what love feels like. The pain wasn't incidental. The pain was what made the relief meaningful, enough to remember. He's been checking his phone for 40 minutes. She read the message. He can see it. No reply. The rational part of his brain knows this is nothing. She's busy. There are 100 explanations. But his body isn't listening to the rational part. His jaw is tight. His focus is gone. He's tried to read the same paragraph 4 times. This is cortisol, not metaphorically, literally. Research on social exclusion shows that perceived disconnection from an attachment figure activates the same neurological threat response as physical danger. His amygdala has classified her silence as a threat, and his hypothalamus has responded accordingly. Then, 47 minutes later, a message. The relief is physical. His shoulders drop. His breathing changes. He didn't realize how tightly he'd been holding himself until he wasn't anymore. For the next hour, everything is fine. Better than fine. That hour is oxytocin. That hour is dopamine returning from below baseline. That hour is his nervous system briefly landing somewhere. It calls safety. Here's what matters. The good hour isn't the reward. The threat was the reward. Without the 47 minutes of silence, the message would have felt ordinary. The dopamine flood only works because the cortisol preceded it. His body needs the stress to manufacture the relief. He's been in this cycle long enough that he no longer questions it. The pattern feels like intensity. The uncertainty feels like depth. The constant low-grade vigilance about whether she's warm or cold today, that feels like caring about someone. Attachment researchers Mikulincer and Shaver call this hyperactivation of the attachment system, a state where the anxiously attached person's threat detection becomes chronically sensitized to signals of rejection, making neutral behavior read as abandonment and brief warmth read as rescue. He is not in love with her uncertainty. He is in love with the relief from it. That distinction will take him a long time to understand. Here's the part that is difficult to hear. The person who is unavailable to you is not making you feel this way. Your nervous system arrived already wired for it. They just fit the pattern. Someone else with identical behavior might have done nothing for you. This particular person activated circuitry that was already there, which means leaving them doesn't end the cycle. The next person who fits the pattern will trigger the same response. Different face, same neurology. This is not hopeless. It is, however, specific. The work isn't about finding someone better. It's about rewiring what your nervous system has learned to call love. Neuroplasticity research gives us one clear direction. The nervous system rewires through repeated corrective experience, not through insight alone. Knowing why you're in the cycle doesn't remove you from it. Experiencing safety slowly, without forcing it, begins to recalibrate the baseline. Some concrete implications. When you feel bored or suspicious with a stable, consistent person, notice it. Don't trust it. Your amygdala is reading familiarity, not reality. The discomfort of safety is temporary. The discomfort of chaos compounds. When the pull back toward unavailability feels urgent, recognize the cortisol spike for what it is. Stress hormones feel like desire. They are not the same thing. When you find yourself reading someone's coldness as depth, their withdrawal as mystery, ask what your body is actually tracking. Usually, it's the imprint. None of this is fast. The nervous system is slow to trust new evidence, but it does update every moment where warmth was received rather than deflected. Every time the loop was noticed and not followed. That's data. That's rewiring. The attraction made sense. Every part of it made biological sense, given what your system was taught about closeness. You weren't failing at love. You were succeeding, exactly, at loving in the only way your nervous system knew how. The question now is whether you want to teach it something different. If this reached something in you, subscribe. We go deep here, and every video builds on the last. In the next video, we go deeper into the specific mechanism behind this, why the anxious-avoidant dynamic doesn't just feel addictive, but neurologically functions like one, and what happens inside the brain of each person caught in that loop. That one is worth not missing. Subscribe so it finds you.